Welcome to the Avro Heritage Museum podcast, supported by Museum Development North and Arts Council England.
The second episode in our series, The Untold Tales of a Young Airman. In the previous episode, we heard how Sergeant Flight Engineer Ernest Rees narrowly escaped death during his brief service with 300 Polish Squadron. In this episode, Ernest's son, Steve, relates a second story involving a Lancaster operation where, despite flak damage, the skipper pressed home the attack. A highly eventful mission, but one that Ernest only thought worthy of just 7 words in his logbook. As the story begins, Ernest is newly transferred from 300 Polish Squadron to the elite 582 Pathfinders Force. But before picking up the story, Steve wanted to pause a few moments to reflect on the extent of his dad's wartime service.
I'm going ahead of myself. I'd like to step back a bit. Yeah, I'm going to step back. After his logbook, after we've talked about his logbook, I realised I needed more information. And it was in 2019 that I wrote to the Air Historical Branch, Building 824 RAF Norfolk in Ruislip, and I asked if I could find out more about his service record itself, because I needed some blank spaces to be filled in. And they sent me his complete service record, which shows that all I have in his logbook to show he was involved from June 44 to May 45. But you can see here in Liverpool, he was recruited on the 29th of September, 1941. Now, at that age, he was 18 years old. So my father's birthday is on the 25th of July. So I would say pretty well as soon as he was able to, he joined up. And he joined up there in the lowest possible form of life. Where is it? AC2. Can you see this?
I can see
AC2.
rank column AC2.
Yeah. Now, apart from cleaning out the toilets, I imagine that's probably the lowest form of life in the RAF as we know it, AC2. But as time went on, he worked his way up to LAC. And that was within a year. And then now he was starting to train as an engineer. But I think his speciality at that time was in engines. I think he was more involved in the mechanical engineering of it.
Yep.
As time progressed, he qualified as a flight engineer there the 9th of January 44, but I think it was 44 when he was actually entitled to fly as a flight engineer. He's still training at various, like there, the 3rd School of Technical Training, then he's at 12 Squadron and so on.
And here,
And there's
AV Row Company.
But that's April 44. So you can see maybe he's getting along his training here, and it I think it's just one day 92 in 44. I don't know. But, so that may have just been a day visit, but it's nice to see that he's actually been to AV Row. But his service record shows his progression through promotions, and I think I could generally say in here, he was recruited in September of 41. He was qualified as a sergeant flight engineer at the age of 20 in May of 44. He was promoted to flight sergeant in February 45, age 21. And then he was promoted to warrant officer. And this is the crown that I saw on his sleeve. That denotes, I suppose you could say, the highest rank of a non-commissioned officer. But that was in May 46, and that's a year after the war. I'm intrigued to know why it took them a year to do that. But now he's at the age of 22, and he was finally discharged in July of 47, as you'll see on the bottom there, discharge 47. This is the last line. I've got a suspicion that following VE Day, he was engaged in preparation work for what was named Tiger Force, which was planning to transfer to the Far East, Okinawa, for bombing operations on Japan. And it all came to a rapid halt as America had other ideas. And Tiger Force was officially disbanded on the 31st of October, 1945. And so that was the end of his true service in the RAF. There's an interesting, in his logbook, an interesting page right at the very end, after all is said and done and everything's finished, right at the very end, it lists aircraft in which flown. And you've got flight engineers course, so there'd be Halifax and Lancasters and so on. But in pencil, right at the bottom of that list, he's written redundant, just one word. And I wonder his thoughts at that moment. It all sounded rather final, doesn't it?
It does.
Redundant.
When you think what he gave, and then it ends with one word. But what it shows, of course, that it was the Lancaster, wasn't it? That was his aircraft, Mark 1 and Mark 3.
That's right, yeah. Yeah.
That was his aircraft.
Yeah. Yeah. Now so for the moment, I'm going to put away these and open up. You remember I stepped back a little earlier on, so I'm now returning to where I would have been. Each squadron had to identify their cream, the cream of the crop, and send them to this new force. With respect to my father, he's a new boy. Why him? What could he offer? I don't know. He was, he'd only been in active flying duties for 1 month. I wouldn't say that he'd earned himself a great record by that time. So particularly, he's only had one operation.
So just tell us a little bit by way of introduction for the listeners about the Pathfinder Squadron.
During the war, the accuracy of area bombing had been brought into question, particularly for high-level bombing and nighttime bombing. In July 42, and with the innovation of latest technology in navigation and target marking, it was decided to form a group specializing in high accuracy. Rather than high accuracy, it would be higher accuracy, able to guide the main bomber formation to reach and destroy the designated target, often by the use of colored target markers, which had been dropped to indicate the actual dropping zone. The colors changed depending on the particular day. I suppose they had decided today will be green, tomorrow will be red or yellow. And I've got my dad's, that is his squadron badge, blazer badge. And it shows pre-volumus designantes is before, before flying, we mark.
Right, okay, that makes sense, doesn't it? That was their job.
Yeah. And so the coloured markers there show either sky markers or more usually, I think, is ground markers and they were nothing less than incendiaries. And depending on the chemical that had been put into the incendiaries, it would burn with a particular colour. Now, the Germans had also twigged to this, and what they did was let's say if you're talking about Cologne, for example, some distance away from Cologne, they would already set fire to farms with incendiaries. And that's why the colours had to be changed on a regular basis, and only when we saw the correct colour could we drop the bombs on the markers.
It's a great badge, isn't it?
582 Squadron.
At the top,
yeah,
you've got the motto, which is exactly what they had to do to mark out for the other aircraft. And then you've got this wonderful centerpiece with the flares.
Yeah. And by this time, the middle or late of 44, 1,000 bomber raids were not unusual. It's just frightening. I can't imagine the thought of 1,000 Lancaster bombers. But the Pathfinders, I'm still unsure about the quantity of aircraft that forms a Pathfinder squadron. Would there be a dozen? Would there be 20? I don't know. But those few that went first, I don't mean to say they were sitting ducks, but they were very much at the forefront of the main bomber group. And I should imagine the anti-aircraft and the fighter pilots would be trying to get them out of the sky.
Yeah, and in addition to the flares, the markers, there was new technology, wasn't there? Tell us a bit about the new technology.
The technology escapes me on a lot of it, but there was G, oboe, and H2S. And I remember my father telling me, occasionally I got something out of him. H2S, we would know in chemical symbol as hydrogen sulfide. And he said, as far as we were concerned, H2S stunk. He was not impressed with the support from H2S. So that was not one of his favourites. But these would enable the planes to fly within a narrow band, enabling them to be sure that from a navigation point of view, they were correct over the targets. And if they ever started to stray outside the band, a signal would be received So this Pathfinders Force was the organisation with numbered 8 group. So all of the Pathfinders Force's squadrons were under 8 group and would be trained in the use of the latest technological advancements, including G, oboe and H2S. And it was intended that the very best navigators, the best pilots and the crew would form Pathfinders Force, selected from other squadrons. So whether they took a full crew from another squadron or selected people from a crew, I don't know. Because clearly my father, I've been looking at his logbook, he didn't stay with one pilot. In 1 month, there'd be half a dozen different captains that he would have. So it was not possible, I think, to have a regular crew. Yes. So, and also in Ernest's case, in my dad's case, he was also to be trained in the operation of the new technology as part of his duties as bomb aimer. You'll see in the logbook, there will be where it says flight engineer, but very often after it, it would say BA, bomb aimer. And so the location of the flight engineer's seat was such that his seat, I think it was more of a folding device, a dicky seat. You could lift up the seat and he could progress down. Yeah. And I would love to see what position a bomb aimer was in, because I can imagine him lying on his chest with the red button. Anyway, so I'm ready to go on to the next story now, if that's all right with you. I need to go on a little bit. This is the 28th of October, 1944. Now he's with Pathfinders Force, 582 Squadron, and the 28th of October. And there we are. If you can see, 28th of October, yep. N is the Lancaster, Wing Commander Macmillan. We've now got Wing Commander Macmillan. Frequently, he is his pilot, so it's not just the odd occasion. So my dad was a flight engineer, and this op is to Cologne. And if you look on the logbook, for those who are unable to see this particular thing, the word Cologne is followed by a comma and then 2 capital letters, yep. MB. And the MB in this particular case denotes Master Bomber. And I'll try and explain my story now. Ernest flew as flight engineer on his 8th operation on this particular day, the 28th of October 1944. Brian Macmillan was his pilot on a daytime mission to Cologne. Now that's something as well, a daytime mission. Yeah. The wing commander had piloted Ernest on missions before on both practice and ops, and this op was to be very special. No details are stated in Ernest's logbook other than 2 letters, MB, inserted after the name of the destination. MB refers to Master Bomber. This means that regardless of how many bombers would take part in the mission, and by this stage of the war, 1,000 bombers would not be unusual, the Master Bomber of the Pathfinders refers to the first of the first. The heaviest of responsibilities lay on the pilot and the crew of this specific aircraft. It's the duty of the Master Bomber to circle the target area to ensure the accuracy of the oncoming main bomber force, and this action exposes the Master Bomber to continued anti-aircraft attack. And an additional note in Ernest's logbook for this mission confirmed: 1 engine feathered, flak in fuel system. Yes. It's worth noting at this point that the flight engineer seated immediately to the right of the pilot would act as his replacement in the event of pilot injury to complete the mission. It's amazing, isn't it? And 1 engine is feathered, yeah. And what are you going to do about it? Yeah. He has to make sure that the fuel is distributed to the other engines, but each engine provided a service on the aircraft. And in this particular case, there was maybe, I think it was lighting and heating that was actually inside the aircraft. Sean Feast added his own dramatic description to this event.
Do we know which engine it was?
Yes. In his 2008 publication, Master Bombers, in Chapter 4, Macmillan, in speech marks, this is a quotation from Sean Feast's book. Macmillan controlled the first phase of the operation until the TIs, that's the target indicators, were totally obscured by smoke, and later crews were instructed to bomb the center of the smoke. Macmillan circled the target area, sustaining flak damage to the port inner engine, cutting the electrical power and condemning the rest of the crew to a slow, lonely and cold flight home.
It was the electrics, not the hydraulics, the electrics.
Yes. Macmillan won a richly deserved DSO for his efforts, and the citation making mention of the considerable flak and his commanding officer describing him as an intrepid pilot who remained over the target for many minutes to press home a most determined and successful attack. This officer is a highly efficient flight commander whose sterling qualities have impressed us all. And following this mission, Macmillan was taken off operations with immediate effect, and a large slap on the back saying, "Well done." I can't help but conclude that Macmillan's entire crew also earned a part of that hard-earned DSO. But just the smallest of notes, one engine feathered, flak in fuel system, seemed to be enough for young Ernest.
Yeah, and there it is in his own handwriting in black ink.
I do have a photograph of the crew that was taken, I would imagine, the day after. But you can't quite tell, but on the fuselage is the back end of the letter N, and this was N. I think it's marked in there. And so there's Wing Commander Mellon in the middle, and there's my father. And have a look what's in his right hand.
A ciggy.
He's standing underneath the engine of a Lancaster bomber with a lit cigarette in his hand. And he died at the age of 49, and smoking was his
Very young.
his main reason.
All 7 of them. Fantastic.
So I describe it here with his ubiquitous cigarette. So I've also got an extract from the London Gazette. I tried to back it up with evidence, and
this is the citation.
This is the citation on the 19th of December 44, and the words in red, in October 44, Wing Commander Macmillan took part in an attack on Cologne. In spite of considerable anti-aircraft fire, this intrepid pilot remained over the target for many minutes to press home a most determined and successful attack. This officer is a highly efficient flight commander whose sterling qualities have impressed all. And so he has received the DSO for that effort. But I hope you can understand my thought there, that the entire crew deserve something, but that's not to be. The officer gets all the credit, doesn't he? But I also have a squadron photograph. It's very, very poor. This is taken in November 1944, and if you could read very closely, it says 582 Squadron, and there's my dad immediately next to the plaque.
All in front of the aircraft.
Yes. Yeah. I'd love to get a decent quality picture of that, but I've not been successful.
And also young, you kind of like sixth form school photograph.
Yeah. Well, by this time he was 21, a ripe old age of 21. So that was my second story.
Thank you again to Steve for continuing with these amazing untold stories. Do join me for the third one, a tragedy that brings home the terrible burden of responsibility that fell on such young shoulders in wartime. And don't forget, if you follow or like the podcast, and you have push notifications switched on in your device, you should get an alert when a new episode is released. Thank you for listening, and goodbye for now.